Yo, welcome to Party Guys 2026 edition. For those of you new to the Party Guys channel, in October 2023, a bit over 2 years ago, I decided to shoot one round of par golf, 18 holes par golf, whatever it took. This channel is all about documenting that journey, what I've learned, how I've learned it, the challenges and successes along the way. And this is my new Party Guys HQ. I haven't finished kitting it out yet, as you can probably see. It's a bit sparse, but I do have the Fonz and Spidey situated, and yeah, I've got my Millennium Falcon ball marker sorted, so a good start. Part of my Party Guys mission is to celebrate some of the incredible folks I've met during the journey, as many as I can, really, and from many of whom I've learned loads about golf, and frequently about life and how to better live it. Fellow travelers who sometimes share similar objectives and frequently possess values, character traits, and practices to which I aspire. It's what I mean when I refer to party guys and party gals. Party does not mean party, though that does happen spontaneously on occasion. Par from the T is a metaphor. It is meant as ambitious, objective-oriented folks who fervently pursue those objectives while practicing curiosity and balancing confidence and humility, ethics, compassion, and other what I would consider aspirational behaviors. We don't always get it right. We're human, but that's why we call it a practice, right? My own golf adventures started from scratch and solo. I had never taken a lesson, ever. I had never held a handicap, didn't own golf clubs, didn't have any golfing buddies, no infrastructure, no framework, no methodology for learning. And at the time, I was living in Amsterdam. And in late fall and pretty much all of winter, it can be a challenge for a golfer, for sure. But that in itself had its strange take on adversity effect. And I embraced it fully, frankly. You can check out some of my sub-zero rounds on the channel here. It's one of the things I love about one of the many things I love about the Dutch culture. You sort of just get on with it. And if you want to play golf in Amsterdam, well, it's a bit like the old-timey U.S. Post Office motto, neither rain nor snow nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds, I think is how it goes. You can just replace couriers with golfers, and that's certainly me, and it's probably many of you. So why take that sort of out of the blue, random life objective, you may wonder? Well, not exactly certain, frankly. For a few years before that, I started thinking about learning to play golf at a high level, and the impetus was just sort of there one day. It was unspecific, but it was insistently present. It wasn't like I was bored or lacking in stimulation in my vocational work or in my leisure time. And yet it persistently whispered in my ear until I finally pulled the trigger at 5 a.m. one October morning. And you can see the video of that very first morning if you like. I filmed it from day one. And I went all in, a passion, a new hobby, and very quickly it turned into a increasingly relevant avocation. And maybe it'll turn into some form or piece of a new vocation. We'll see. In retrospect, reverse engineering a bit, which I did, I think I innately sensed that I needed some combination of physical, emotional, psychological, and maybe even spiritual, let's call it exercise. I sensed that the things that would be required of me to achieve that very challenging objective, playing golf at a very high level, would provide a rubric and or a sort of forcing function for the muscle building that would fuel the modalities of abundance that I perpetually seek to manifest for myself and others. Those modalities, all in equal weighting in no particular order, are health, wealth, creative manifestation, learning adventures, and relational excellence. And there was this fortunate personal twist that as a product management professional, which can be pithily described as value optimization and innovation in a commercial context, I had this increasingly strong instinct that what we refer to in my profession as product mindset and product principles and practices would be helpful in training myself to play golf at that high level. More on that in another video, and I can tell you here and now that has proven to be true. It was from some of those practices that I chose my North Star mission of 1 round of 18-hole par golf, which continues to guide me to this day. It was also from those practices that I choose perpetually to set clear and measurable intermediate objectives and key results, or what we call OKRs, that I believe will have a causal impact on moving me towards that North Star objective. And I set them for each calendar year, and I allow myself to adapt or change them if and when I learn something new. I just don't change them that often. And I review them in earnest at the end of each year to inform the next version of the objectives for the following year. So, with that context, welcome to my year-end update for 2025 and OKR setting for 2026. For 2025, I set 3 ambitious objectives, and let's dive into the first. The first one is sustainably break into a single-digit handicap. Simple. Anything less than a 10, for example, a 9.9 or 9.999 would count. And I was an 11 at the end of the previous year, 2024, and it took me about 15 months to get there. I felt pretty good about that, but I would not have called it, and I did not call it, a sustainable 11, as it was vacillating between an 11 and 13 for the latter half of that year. Spoiler alert, at the end of 2025, I was a 9. So technically, this box was ticked. And I mostly feel that this is sustainable, that it was sustainable, having fluctuated between an 8.6 and an 11 for the last few months of 2025. You know, one might say, well, that doesn't seem like a lot of progress for a whole year, a few measly strokes off your handicap. I actually agree. I'm feeling the move to lower and lower handicap numbers is somewhat exponentially difficult, maybe even asymptotic, like having your distance to a wall, right? Where you get closer and closer, but you never actually touch the wall. For me anyways, but maybe it's just like pressure points, right? That eventually give way and the floodgates open, a bit like the support or resistance levels in a stock market. I don't know. At the moment, though, it does feel that it requires more energy and investment to shave a couple strokes off a single-digit handicap than it did to shave them off a double-digit handicap. I'm not sure that's true for others, but it is my experience so far as I move into the single digits. And at my core, I fundamentally do not believe that this needs to be true. And that's a hypothesis that I need to test. I am realizing there is a macro rhythm to this, an oscillating improvement cycle that trends towards improvement, but it's not a straight line. There are these peaks and valleys that are simply part of the process. And you'll hear me call the dips in excellence my dark times, when the cycle just feels negative. But it's actually a necessary part of the journey and the process. And I'm exploring hacks to accelerate that curve downward in this case, or find step function improvements, jumps, unlocks, leaps in ability and repeatability. And I ultimately recognize that indeed shortcuts and cheat codes for unlocks do exist, but they aren't cure-alls. You just have to go through the process of reprogramming the body and mind to a new level. It's not a I know golf kind of thing. And as part of that process, for the first objective of attaining a sustainable single-digit handicap, the key results, or KRs, that I set that I felt would, and ultimately did, have a causal effect on attaining this objective were: first, meditate a minimum of 5 times per week for 20 minutes uninterrupted. I feel very, very strongly that even if I do not have empirical evidence of causality, meditation helps me optimize performance for whatever state my golf skills or game are at any given time. And I failed this one abjectly. That is, the output for which I aimed of doing dedicated 20-minute meditations 5 days a week, maybe I averaged 2. That said, along the way, I did find a way to do micro meditations and breathing exercises that have inevitably helped me pre-round and on course. I now have little tricks that I use on course: visualizations, box breathing, think box, play box, moving focus of attention to different points. When I start to get a little agitated or anxious, I've sometimes been able to use those techniques to work my way through those feelings and situations and performed. Not perfectly, not predictably, not even repeatably necessarily, but better. And still, I know that consistent exercising of my mind is a critical input for me in improving my on-course performance, and I'm lacking there. And though I failed at quantity, qualitatively, my visualization and focus and vocation definitely improved over 2025. One of the highlights there is that I feel my practice of moving my focus of attention to different parts of my body, and often I use the so-called energy centers, like the crown chakra and the third eye chakra and the throat chakra and the heart chakra and so forth. It exercises my ability to lock in and clear the mechanism, as Billy Chappell mantraed in For the Love of the Game.
Hey, Chappell! Yo, Chappell! You suck! You stink on ice! You couldn't pitch a tent!
Clear the mechanism.
Great movie. And I practice that focus movement frequently, and I can do it anytime, in a recovery bath, while driving to and from the range, whenever. It doesn't matter whether one believes that those body points are divine or conduits of power. It could be random points on your body, right? It could be your philtrum. It could be your weenus, right? That little piece of your elbow. It could be your solar plexus or even your taint. We're not going to show taints here. It matters that we're able to move the focus from one point to another as part of the meditation ritual. And each center, think of it as a piece of the overall whole of being able to invoke the lock-in mindset when on course and we're a little over anxious or overexcited. It helps me to get out of my head and move focus down to the lower chakras, into the body, to empower it to do what it already knows how to do. Just get the mind out of the way. Again, I'm no yogi, and I have a lot of room for improvement in this department. I've just seen progress in efficacy, and I have vowed that this practice will persist and evolve for 2026, but we'll revise it to be a bit more achievable for me at this time in my life. And I'll talk about that in my 2026 OKRs. Key result 1.2 was about physical fitness. It was a challenge to craft meaningful metrics for this, and what I came up with were more qualitative, evolutionary KRs that I allowed to change as I learned, frankly. The first piece was to commit to a specific pre-round strength and flexibility warm-up. Again, this was more of a qualitative KR that evolved over the year. The commitment is now to do my warm-up routine, fully commit to it for every single round, pre-round, which I do. And I'm conscious of doing a mini version of that on the tee box later in the round. So I'll say this part actually gets a tick. And the second part is another physical fitness covenant, which was to commit to a dedicated strength and flexibility training regimen outside the course. That is a full workout every chance I got between rounds. I ended up doing this probably a maximum of 2 and occasionally 3 times a week, and that was not my intention. I wanted to have a full 3 times a week. And I'm recommitting to this. I'm even considering playing less to make room for it. That is, I get seduced to go play or practice at the course, and my fitness and flexibility training gets deprioritized. And that simply cannot happen anymore. So I have to draw a line somewhere. And to support that, I actually, about mid-year, I joined Par for Success, or P4S. Even though they have a very, very excellent remote coaching program that's used by folks all over the world, they happen to be located just minutes up the road from me. So now I get structured golf physical therapy and training once a month from a professional there. Shout out to Dave Harpin, who informs my fitness and flexibility regimen that I take away for my do-it-yourself work. I also use the very excellent golf specialized gym they have there at least once a week. It's magnificent. Mondays for sure, as the courses are closed on Mondays. And then I try and dovetail in another one during the week, at least one. The third one was to also commit to a recovery regimen. Now, this was a big one. This may be different for a 66-year-old than a 26 or 36 or 46-year-old. I don't know. And again, this evolved as I learned about the whatever works, trying out different things. And where I ended up was largely doing what I learned to do the previous year. First, very hot Epsom salt baths, very hot. This I experimented with in 2024 and fully committed to in 2025. Andrew Huberman, the noted Stanford neuroscientist, recommends between 104 degrees and 113 degrees for 20 minutes. I started at about 106 degrees, and now I do 109 degrees for 20 minutes almost every morning, and sometimes post-round, depending on how I feel. This has been a game changer for recovery, particularly at my age. My recovery regimen also includes pseudo cold plunges. What do I mean by pseudo? Last year, I was traveling a lot, and so I couldn't pull the trigger on a dedicated cold plunge. Sometimes I had to settle for example, a hotel bathtub too small for my 6'3" frame, and get ice from the ice machine down the hall, or using very cold showers for 5 minutes at home or on travel, as well as committing to clothing myself in cold packs for like 15 minutes, especially my right arm, my right shoulder, my neck, my hips, my lower legs. Just need a little space in your freezer for these, and they're super cheap, so it's worth doing. A proper cold plunge is definitely on the list. I just haven't pulled the trigger yet in our new home. The cold therapy sounds more cumbersome than it really is, and it works, full stop. Then there was, of course, hydration and nutrition. This applies to prep, in-round and recovery. It is so easy to forget, and I still do sometimes. It's really kind of strange. I now typically superhydrate pre-round, during the round, and post-round, and I've dialed into using this Element product for the electrolytes, watermelon mostly. And I do one per day when I'm not playing, and 1 or 2 per round, depending on the conditions when I do play. And for nutrition, day to day, I stick largely to an alkaline-leaning diet to reduce the risks of inflammation. Hydration helps there too, of course, but you need to have alkalized water to make sure you're doing that. And on course, my mainstays are in no particular order: classic beef jerky, that's a mainstay; jalapeno beef sticks; gourmet pork rinds; dark chocolate covered almonds; dried figs and apricots; and occasionally I treat myself to a peanut butter and banana sandwich with a little honey drizzled on it, taking a page from Tiger's book there. And I can't forget the sunflower seeds, though I think the seeds are more about a tasty, salty distraction than actual nutrition. I think it really does help get my mind off of things. I also occasionally will have a few Pacificos or high noons with pals, but never in a competition. And lastly, and critical for recovery, stretching. This, of course, relates to my strength and flexibility regimen, and it has been very important to my recovery to do the flexibility exercises with regularity. And it became easier and easier to commit to them as I saw the connection to both sustainable recovery and performance. So I do stretching routines at least once a day, and just got to build it into one's life. On to the third key result for my first objective of sustaining a single-digit handicap. 1.3 was break par on the par 3 5 times. The hypothesis here was that under 150 yards was going to be the most critical aspect of consistent scoring. It's kind of a duh observation, yet no less veracious. It's good to say it out loud. And I've been doing pretty good with parring the par 3. I've done it at least 5 times, breaking par. But that was the par 3 at the course in my Amsterdam practice facility, which is fabulous, by the way, where their holes were no longer than around 90 yards. So in general, this KR was lacking some structure and some of the instruction on technique that I felt like I needed something more here. And then by pure good fortune, it was magnificent, I discovered Operation 36. I pivoted mid-year on this KR to the Operation 36 program, which has built-in KRs intrinsic to the Operation 36 program itself. I already had experienced causal connections to me shooting or breaking par on the 9-hole par 3 in Amsterdam and my scoring improvements on normal 18-hole courses. And as my partner and I settled in on where we ended up moving to the States, it was pure happenstance to discover this amazing Operation 36 program. And even more kismet that the program, the product, and the company was born only a few miles from our new home. Bizarre and really good fortune. So I chose to fully go back to school. I stowed the I'm already good enough and I know how to do that shot ego nonsense, and I went back to square one, displaying my ignorance and fully practicing my curiosity. The program itself makes it pretty easy to do that for what it's worth. You can check out the videos I did for a few of the Operation 36 level attempts for some color on how the program works in practice. They're linked in the description. Also, check out the on-course interview that fellow student Zach Penix and I did with Matt Reagan, the co-founder of Operation 36, for an insightful origin story on him and Operation 36. Matt came out and did our level 5, 200 yards, very difficult level, attempt with us while we had a chat with him. He's amazing and an exemplary entrepreneur. As the Operation 36 program superseded the Par 3 key result, the whole KR naturally transformed into the gamified structure of the program. It included the training and coaching intrinsic to the program and the skills and distance levels they incorporate into the on-course practice and play. It didn't take me long over the latter half of 2025 where I was able to pass level 1, 25 yards, multiple times. It's very good practice with a formal score of 28 and a personal best of 26. Level 2, 50 yards with a score of 31. Level 3 with the same score. And level 4, interestingly, with a score of 29. Don't know why it was a better score than levels 2 and 3. And my level 5, 200 yards, very difficult level, I failed during the attempt we did while interviewing co-founder Matt Reagan. And succeeded in a separate attempt with a score of 36. Kind of squeaked by on that one. And I attribute a lot of it to with whom I happened to be playing that day. Zach and Hannah Joins, our club couples champions. They were very kind and kept me sort of calm in the eye of the storm. I will be going for a personal best break par effort at level 5 in 2026. It's one of the brilliant things about the Operation 36 program. If you keep committing to it, you can improve different aspects of your game by going out and playing 9 purposeful holes of golf focused on specific skills inside of certain distances. And they have skill building built into the app on top of the weekly skill building coaching. For more information on the program, check out operation36.golf. And my fourth and final key result for Objective 1 was to play a minimum of 75 rounds. Overall, I played 85 rounds in 2025, 67 of which were scoring rounds. So I'm going to say I ticked that box. I averaged about 5 to 6 scoring rounds per month with at least 3 9 to 18 hole practice rounds per month with very specific objectives for each of those. I acknowledge this is let's call it an output-oriented KR, that is, there is no direct causal evidence that playing more rounds will lower your scores and handicap. That depends on the inputs into those rounds. And still, I know that reps are critical, and that means real-world, on-course situations, as many as possible. And leave it to the other OKRs, different investments, to ensure that the inputs to these many rounds and reps are the right inputs. And within this KR is the necessary dedication of some of those rounds to work on specific aspects of my game or equipment. For example, almost half of my strokes lost is in approaches, that under 150-yard distance I referred to a moment ago. And no amount of driving range reps are going to fix that. You need both, but you mostly need to get out in random lies and make it happen repeatably. This dedicating whole rounds to skills practice has been challenging for me, and I'm pretty sure it's challenging for many of you as well. Whether you're time limited or like me, every time you go out have this urge to score, it's too easy for me to convince myself I have what I need to score. I can do this. But the truth is I need to recommit to the scoring rounds and dedicate whole rounds to working on 1 or 2 specific things, like I did in the past, the year before, playing a whole round with just my 7-iron, for example, and of course a sand wedge and a putter, or playing with just odd or even clubs to force myself to get the feel for hitting knockdown clubs for shorter distances, for example. A 4 to 5 hour round is a heck of an investment, so it's a challenge to invest it in a non-scoring, or scoring for that matter, practice. But it's critical. The truth is, Even in my scoring rounds, I now incorporate a very, very short list of named out loud, things, never more than 3, that I'm there to practice. It's the only way to battle harden new things I've learned. For example, I tried out a new feel for the finish with my hybrids, chest forward. I have a different setup for my putting and a methodology for judging and executing pitch distances, etc., etc., etc. But no more than 3, and oftentimes only 1. You got to grind through those during a round, even if they aren't working in early holes or for the whole round. It invariably will affect the score you'll shoot that day, but I will add that if I'm in a competition, team or individual, I try to pre-agree with myself those things that I will and will not try on the course that day. I articulated out loud the state of my game and how I will approach the round. And I typically do that in the warm-up based on what I'm feeling that day. For example, play the fade when I'm obsessed at the moment with relearning to hit a draw at will. Don't change your putting setup, or your flops are not high percentage, so do everything you can not to pull out that shot unless it's the only choice you have. Whatever. I just consciously decide that I'll only experiment if the conditions and context are suitable, and I do it out loud. Food for thought. That was a lot for objective 1, and it was my most important objective. On to objective 2. Make the move to a more friendly to golf locale and climate. To be frank, at the beginning of the year, this was a longer term ambition and not really expected to be in the cards for 2025. It was more about making the moves to set up for that move, the plan for the plan. Fate intervened in the saddest of ways, and my mom of 91 had become increasingly ill in the second half of 2024 and early 2025, and I was traveling a lot to California to spend time with her. And then the gut punch came when she died in March, just 2 weeks before her 92nd birthday. My mother, who over the years became my friend, decided it was time for herself to move on. And she died exactly the way she lived, as she intended, in her home that she created peacefully in her sleep with family surrounding her. Rest in peace, Sarah Lee. You were an iconoclast and an amazing advocate for my loony adventures. Mom moving on to her next adventure happened to coincide with my life partner's increasing desire to move back to the States, the South or the southeastern part. So I found myself in California and the U.S. Southeast more and more for unavoidable personal reasons, while balancing my job, which I loved, based in Amsterdam. It was a professional role that was designed to be self-obsoleting, though, as are all the roles that I've taken over the last 10 or so years. So we decided to pull the trigger on the move during 2025. We'll just call it a silver lining in challenging times, that while it was not the sole reason we moved to the Carolinas, those life reasons for being in the States lent themselves very well to my emergent golf objectives. And here I am. After we made the commitment, I found a couple clubs to join to make it more frictionless and economical and satisfying to play golf more and more. These are very good and very different courses. One of them, a Nicklaus course that is delightfully difficult. And after all the dynamism and stress of 2025, Mom's passing, working with my brothers to wrangle her estate, and planning and executing a move between countries, balancing a remote job, etc. In the end, it has been a life and ParTeeGuys bonus. My partner and I now live in one of the meccas of U.S. golf, really world golf, the Carolinas. Pinehurst, Kiowa, Tobacco Road, incredible university courses, and so many more. Just an extraordinary diversity of challenges. And the home of Operation 36, Par for Success, and other moving the needle golf programs. It's an embarrassment of riches in golfing adventures, so I am absolutely blessed in that department now. And the third and final 2025 objective was related to building the ParTeeGuys brand and channel. I necessarily deprioritized this objective given the simple lack of bandwidth. I didn't have the time. I have a massive backlog of unpublished content and as yet unrealized ambitions related to my golf journey and how it may help others, and how my golf journey relates to my longtime profession in product management. Still, so much to explore and share, as the two are intermingling and mapping to a bit of a, let's call it a professional pivot. I don't know yet what that pivot fully looks like, but that's into what Objective 3 has transformed. How do I want to see my relationship with golf professionalize, or do I? How can my professional experience contribute to my and others' golf journey? And conversely, what am I learning from golf that can improve my ability to help product management professionals and teams? You'll see more of that in a moment in my 2026 objectives, which came from a combination of fails on 2025 objectives and from those unpredictable things I learned over the years. So what about my overall 2025 stats? I only used the scoring rounds in the analysis, and that numbered 67. As said, I averaged about 6 scoring rounds per month. That's up from 48 in 2024, so that's almost 50% more reps just from the scoring rounds. And I played probably another 20 non-scoring rounds of 9 or 18. For those scoring rounds I played, scoring average, 84.5. That's about 3 strokes improvement from 2024. Average number of putts, 34.6. A weakness on which I'm working, but almost 2 strokes better than 2024. Fairways in regulation, 71%. Now this is a highlight for sure, and not manipulated. I'm pretty strict about recording this stat. Greens in regulation, 44%. Par 4s are for sure my weakness at 40%. Par 3s, nearly 1 and 2 at 48%, and par 5s are just over 50%. I think it was 51%. And AI Summary laid it out for me. At the moment, I putt like a mid-double-digit handicapper and approach pretty close to my average for a high single-digit handicapper, though it feels lamer than that. My scrambling percentage, for pars, 24%, big weakness. For bogeys, 34%, a strength, and I'm not sure what to make of that, why I can scramble for bogeys better than pars. For scramble pars, an average scratch golfer would be at 50%. An average 5 handicap golfer would be at 37%, and an average 10 handicapper is at 31% plus. So this is a real weakness. The potential encouraging news with respect to putting, the last 10 rounds, I'm pretty close to 33 putts per round. So maybe that's moving in the right direction. We'll see. How would I summarize my 2025 highlights? Well, I broke 80 for the first time. I did it in May and a second time in June, both of them on my home course. And then I went through a bit of a bleak, dark backsliding period, dark time, where I had a dozen rounds where I shot between 80 and 82 and just couldn't close the deal. And then I broke 80 again for the third and fourth time in December. I'll know it's relatively sustainable when I get to a mid-single digit handicap. The second, I got through round 3 into the Elite 8 in a match play tournament. That was an exciting surprise, totally unexpected. Check out the video series that I did on that. I posted it and I put the link in the description below. It was also very revealing of some of the growing psychological strengths and, of course, revealing of the work still to be done. The third one, I played several bucket list courses. I played Olympic again. I've done it before, of course, but it's one of my favorites. Erin Hills, I got up there. That was super cool. I had an interesting round. Snapped my driver on the third hole, and I learned a lot about some of the mechanical issues I was hiding through athleticism. I got a chance to play TPC Sawgrass. I started out strong there and didn't finish strong. I want to get back, but it's pretty penny to play there. And I had a second go at Verulam in the UK where the Ryder Cup was born, and I challenged myself to beat the round that I played there a year prior. Check out the video to see how I did going head-to-head with myself. The link's in the description. And the fourth, my discovery of Operation 36, and subsequently practicing for and passing levels 1 through 5. These felt like really important achievements. The program has these perfect set of intermediate objectives one needs to bridge between practice and playing full-length rounds of 18 holes for score and handicap. And some version of this is critical for improvement. If you consider yourself a lifelong learner and are keen to improve your game, I implore you to check your ego, activate your curiosity, and check out the Operation 36 program. And what were the 3 most important or useful things that I learned in 2025? I learned a lot during that leg of my North Star journey to 1 round of par, and I cannot list them all here, so I'll share 3. First, ability and repeatability are entirely different skills to learn. I don't know if this is controversial or obvious for y'all, and it was an epiphany for me. Knowing how to do something once, a certain type of bunker or chip or pitch shot, or how to draw or fade a drive, for example, I find I can pick up stuff pretty quick. I'm pretty good at the monkey see, monkey do stuff. And it's a very different thing to learn to do it once than being able to do it, say, 2 out of 3 times or 9 out of 10 times, particularly in situ, under battlefield conditions. I'm acknowledging and proclaiming this differentiation is critical to my improvement, and I need to have a different learning plan for both. My hypothesis is that ability is mostly, let's call it 80%, physical, with some psychological, and repeatability is mostly psychological, encompassing so-called mental and emotional, and includes some physical. I see no downside to going with this distinction to inform my evolution. The second is there are granularities, or let's call them zoom levels, of mental or emotional resetting. The ability to reset is integral to playing golf at a high level. Believing that to be true, I chose to commit to engaging in as much match play for 2025 as I could get my hands on in 2025. I thought it would be a good mechanism to exercise that reset muscle. And for whatever reason, I found it relatively easy to reset during those hole-to-hole competitions, that is match play. Overall, at the moment, I would say I'm fantastic at resetting round to round. I'm goldfish level superpowers there. I'm pretty good at resetting back 9 to front 9. And let's call it increasingly good at resetting hole-to-hole. Far better at hole-to-hole resetting of emotions or frustration or anxieties than I am shot to shot. That's probably not surprising to folks, I'd imagine. But, and I think this is a but, I'm also finding that too much reliance on match play, exercising the hole-to-hole resetting muscle, weakens my ability to reset at the higher time granularity of stroke play. That is, it is a very, very different thing for me to reset my emotions and focus from a bad shot or a duff chip or a biff drive and focus back in on my process for the next shot. Whereas I feel I can much better compartmentalize a hole or a whole round and let it go, focusing in on the immediate future. I don't yet exactly know how I'll improve the granularity of my resetting, and it's an objective to discover more about that in 2026. And 3, I'd like to coach others to achieve their full potential in golf, which I believe will also help them in life. I've always been interested in tutoring, mentorship, coaching, and helping other folks reach their full potential. And I've engaged in loads of it over the course of my life and career. And I've already formed a deep belief that what we call the product mindset in my profession can translate to learning how to play golf. I also recognize and have been influenced by the profound efficacy and obvious success of a program like Operation 36, which independently developed their own version of the product mindset, the better never best learning and law of incremental returns and value optimization for youths and adults in learning golf. It's amazing. My passion for coaching and mentorship has now translated to one of my objectives for 2026. So that wraps up my ParTeeGuys 2025 chapter. Now, my ParTeeGuys objectives and key results for 2026. Objective 1. Attain PGA accreditation. This had never occurred to me until the last few months. And after it did, I did a bit of what-if research, and I now believe this to be a fantastic rubric for fueling my longer-term North Star objective of playing 1 round of 18-hole par golf and all the benefits for myself and others I feel will come out of achieving it while practicing curiosity, compassion, and grace. It will be challenging, for sure, but if I'm serious about my North Star, which I am, then it is intrinsically achievable. There are essentially 4 dimensions to achieving PGA professional accreditation, and they map perfectly to key results for this objective. KR 1.1, pass a background check. Surprisingly, I did. I guess the authorities haven't caught up with me yet. Number 2, complete the PGA coursework. Turns out there is a substantial body of golf knowledge that one needs to learn to get PGA accreditation, and I'm super curious about all that knowledge, so I have keenly tucked into this one. 3rd, pass the PAT, the playing ability test. That is, shoot 2 rounds that amount to 15 strokes over the course rating for the course on which the PAT is administered. That's essentially 2 break 80 rounds in one day under tournament-like conditions. Now, I go back and forth on whether or not I can do this, frankly. Mostly, I'm confident, though doubt and anxiety frequently creep in, and I look it in the face. I'm really excited to find a way to pass the PAT, and I expect it to take multiple goes at it. It speaks directly to the mental, emotional, psychological aspects of the game I need and intend to improve on to achieve my North Star objective. And fourth, find a role where I can be employed by a PGA recognized organization. Now, this is a bit of a strange one for me, as it's not a core intention of mine to get employed, and this is a requirement of the PGA. So I'll be exploring symbiotic relationships where I am employed in the definition needed by the PGA, and in such a way that I am able to learn something specific about golf and contribute to helping other individuals or enterprises in some way that leverages my professional skills and experience, and ideally employs and shares what I've learned in my own golf learning journey. I happen to be intrinsically curious about all manner of things regarding how golf works in both the for-profit and non-profit business contexts. And based on what I currently know today, 2 things I'm keenly interested in are tournament organization and execution, and coaching and mentoring folks whom I describe as kids of all ages, where that kids of all ages includes youth, of course, and also translates to humans who are perpetually curious and lifelong learners, regardless of age. It's something I try to practice myself, of course, and part of this mix is likely to be doing something with young folks that mixes golf and life skills. We'll see what manifests here. Objective 2 is complete the Operation 36 program. I believe this will be one of the linchpins to achieving the first objective, the PGA accreditation. It's essentially a forcing function to improve my approaches in pitching and chipping. The first key result for this one, achieve personal bests at each of the levels 1 through 5. I've already passed levels 1 through 5 in the program, and my personal bests so far were 25, 31, 31, 31, 29, and 36 respectively. Though while those scores were good enough to pass the nominal Operation 36 criteria, their definition of par, that is 9 holes of a maximum of 4 strokes from each distance level, the scores I need in order to translate to a sustained lower mid-single-digit handicap are lower than that, which the Operation 36 program acknowledges and accounts for. Those personal best key results I intend: level 1, 25 yards, 24. That's 3 of 9 up and downs, a score of 2, and 6 of 9 scores of 3, and no 4s, i.e. Operation 36 pars. All Operation 36 birdies and eagles. Level 2, 50 yards, same, 24. Level 3, 100 yards, same, 24. Level 4, 150 yards, 27. That is on and a 2-putt, or on and 2 and a 1-putt for every hole. Level 5, 33. That's 6 Operation 36 pars and 3 Operation 36 birdies, each and all of which I believe will contribute to KR 2.2, completing Operation 36 Level 6. Shoot a 9-hole round of par from the red tees. I'm very excited to go all in on completing Operation 36 through Level 6. And KR 2.3 helps spread the Operation 36 word. I believe in this program deeply, so will continue to trumpet my own experience and sing the program's praises, which forces me to distill my experience and learnings in order to communicate that experience of the essence of the efficacy of the program to others. And I'll probably offer unsolicited feedback to the Operation 36 crew along the way, so sorry for that. How I measure this will mostly be qualitative, and if I'm able to influence even one adult to join the program and see it improve their game, I'll call that box ticked. And my final 2026 objective, improve my ability and repeatability. Again, my hypothesis here is that these are entirely separable dimensions of improvement, where it would be prudent to design separate investment paths. KR 3.1, ability. As I said, I believe this is 80% physical, and it includes the first sub-KR, learn new types of shots, broaden and deepen my repertoire. So an example here is the flop shot. going high around the green when I have a decent lie and I need it. I have bits and pieces of this shot, but I need to lock in the technique so that I can take it into a repeatability track. How will I know? You'll have to see KR 3.3 in a second. I need also to learn all bunker shots. I'm now pretty comfortable with kind of standard bunker shots, and I even look forward to them frequently. And I need a broader set of tools and non-standard bunker lies. Again, see KR 3.3 for the how will I know it's working. Another one is the in-between club shots, using the same wedge or iron for different distances. Again, the how will I know? Stand by for that in KR 3.3. And then the second sub-KR is improve my physical fitness and flexibility. This is a better, never best effort that I've perpetuated from 2025. I need a minimum of 3 workouts per week and a commitment to my existing on-course warm-ups and post-round recovery plan. The third sub-KR is putter setup and swing. I feel physically uncomfortable over many putts. It's very strange, and that's a key thing I need to improve my confidence in. It's a huge part of putting, confidence. And the fourth sub-KR is driver swing speed. Get my driver speed to sustainable 145 mile per hour ball speed with a stretch goal of 150. And that is indeed a stretch, as I'm in the mid to high 130s at the moment. My hypothesis here is that gaining 10 to 20 plus yards off the tee will help me improve the efficacy of my approach shots, shorter distances in. The second KR for Objective 3 is repeatability. Supersede the reliance on innate athleticism with predictable process. And I believe this is 80% psychological and includes, first, locking in that mental, psychological, and emotional resilience and higher frequency of reset shot to shot. My output here, dedicated 20-minute meditations minimum 3 times per week, and perpetuate the on-course micro-meditations, breathing exercises, and lock-in techniques like think box, play box, single swing thought, etc. The outcomes here are also wrapped up in KR 3.3. The second here is in shot setup, that is an input for more repeatable outcomes. The output here, a qualitative commitment to whatever is working pre-shot ritual and allowing myself to be coached and changed as I learn. The outcomes, also wrapped up in KR 3.3. The third, recovery and resilience, micro and macro on-course resets. The output here is a qualitative commitment to whatever lock-in and setup routines I'm using better, never best at that time, and stick to it until I consciously and deliberately change it. Also, a qualitative commitment to post-shot and post-hole mini retrospectives, and a qualitative commitment to post-round retrospectives. The intended outcomes, again, see KR 3.3. And fourth, enter and complete competitions. The output, 10 competitions, a mix of match play and stroke play. I must enter and complete at least 10, and my PAT attempts count. The outcomes, again, see 3.3 and also 1.3. And that oft-referred KR 3.3 is to achieve a handicap of 5. Even as I write this, I experience ambivalence around whether I can achieve it and what it'll take. I entertain that doubt every once in a while, and I examine it, stare it in the face. And I simultaneously am certain I can do it. Part of me says, I know what it'll take, and another part of me knows I don't know what I don't know. This is an alien landscape I'm moving into, a new land I'm exploring. And objectives 1 and 2 will help passing the PAT and finishing Operation 36, and so will KRs 3.1 and 3.2. And the sub-key result stats derived from PGA averages for a 5 handicap that will tell me I'm in the hunt. Average fairways in regulation of 60%. My fairways in regulation were 71% for all of 2025, 67 scoring rounds, and I feel I need to give myself a little room to redo my driver swing. That is, get my ball speed up over 145, so I'm not going to be as accurate. Average 5 handicap would have a fairway and regulation stat between 50 and 70%, so I'm squarely there. Greens in regulation, 50%. It was 44% for 2025, and an average 5 handicap would be about 46% plus. Average putts, 32. It was between 34 and 35 per round average for 2025, and an average 5 handicap would be a 32. Average par scrambling percentage of 37%, which is about the average for a 5 handicap. Mine was 24% for 2025, and this is probably the most critical improvement I need for 2026. Easy, right? And I'm excited for this next chapter. Please wish me well. Always better, never best, staying true to 72.